We simulated every possible game order for MCC 23 to figure out what the best and worst strategies are for each team. The Red Rabbits. The Red Rabbits are a very well-rounded team, with pretty consistent scores across the board. Tommy and CBK do well in PvP games, and Shovel's very good team games averages covers this team's biggest weakness. Of all the possible games, 2 games stand out from the rest: Sky Battle and Survival games. Tommy and CBK have 2 of the highest averages in Sky Battle, while Survival games is a team effort with everyone scoring decently. Survival games was also Ethan's highest scoring game in MCC Pride, and if he can score similarly, this team is not one you want to run into inside the border. However, despite their strengths, the road to dodgeball is going to be difficult for one reason: movement games. Ace Race, To Get to the Other Side, and especially Rocket Spleef are all very poor games for this team, and should be avoided if possible. To an extent, these low scores can be made up if Ethan gets a bit more comfortable with the various maps of MCC, but if these games are in the rotation, try to play them early. The player to watch on the Red Rabbits is going to be TommyInnit. Following a bit of a slump at the end of Season 1 into the middle of Season 2, Tommy has had a string of really good events, with 2 wins since MCC 19 and great placements in that time as well. However, a pattern emerges. When you examine the teams that Tommy has taken to dodgeball, for every team except MCC 2, Tommy's first MCC, Tommy has had the 3rd highest placement of his team. Tommy seems to operate best when he isn't forced to lead, and instead is able to pop off and make risky maneuvers in PvP and movement games. However, that playstyle might not work well with this team's needs, so if this team wants to make it to dodgeball, Tommy is going to have to improve as a shot caller and leader, not just as individual talent. The distribution for this team has them placing in the bottom half, but this team has all the pieces to be a dodgeball contender. If Ethan can improve from his first MCC and Tommy becomes better at managing teammates, don't be surprised if you see this team in the top half fighting for a dodgeball spot. We'll be releasing part 2 of Team Guides tomorrow, so if you don't want to miss it, make sure to subscribe. Only 29% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so scroll down and check. The Orange Ocelots. The Orange Ocelots are statistically one of the most well-rounded teams in this event, with their top 4 games all falling into different categories. Their Sanso time and Ace Race scores are the highest of any teams, with every member scoring above their personal average in Sanso time. Something to note about Ace Race though is that only Quig and Martin score above their averages. It's Eric's 2nd worst game, and Finn has only played the Space Race map in Season 2, so playing any other map could actually lower his score. Orange is also the best Meltdown team, although this is partially skewed by the fact that Meltdown has only been played once before. While Martin and Finn didn't get the chance to play it, Quig and Eric both managed to place in the top 15. Finally, their 4th best game is Sky Battle, where their average score of 1,109 points is second only to Yellow. Unsurprisingly, this is Quig's best individual game, as his average Sky Battle score is the highest in this event, being over 200 more than his personal average. Martin also performs above his personal average, but Eric and Finster both score below theirs. In addition to Orange's best games being played from different game types, the same thing goes for their worst games. In Hole in the Wall, no player lands above their personal average. They'll also want to avoid Grid Runners, which is their 3rd worst game. What makes this so interesting is that they are the 5th best Grid Runners team in the event. Quig has historically done well in this game, with his team being the first to finish the course 2 separate times. A failure to finish in MCC 19 is part of the reason that his Grid Runner score is currently well below his average. However, Orange's worst game by quite a bit is Survival games, in which they'll have the worst score in the event. Everyone scores not only below their personal average, but also the event Survival games average. Should they face a Survival games finale, Orange's dodgeball chances drop as low as 18%, but should Survival games get skipped, they have a 48% chance of first place. Orange's distribution has them placing no lower than 7th, with a nearly 50% chance of them making dodgeball. However, this team's placement will be very dependent on game order, seeing as no category is clearly good or bad for them. If they manage to push their strong games to the second half, they could absolutely be the team to look out for. The Yellow Yaks. To no one's surprise, the Yellow Yaks are absolutely fantastic at PvP games. Yellow has the highest SG average, the highest Battle Box average, and the highest Sky Battle average. Every member of Yellow performs well above their average in these games, with the exception of Elena in Sky Battle. This makes Yellow one of the strongest PvP teams we've seen in a while, and if they can get any of these games played late in the event, they absolutely should. In fact, if all 3 of these games are played in the event, Yellow's odds to make dodgeball increase from 20% to over 50%. A lot of this team's success is going to be determined by the game pool and the number of PvP games available, but if they get a significant number, this team should absolutely dominate. While at first glance this team seems to struggle at team games, their worst game actually ends up being movement based. Yellow is one of the weakest Ace Race teams in the event, and their Rocket Spleef rush score is even lower. Even worse than those 2, at least on paper, is Meltdown, where they only have a score of 786 coins. However, given that data for Meltdown is extremely limited as it's only been played once, it's possible that this game is not as bad as it seems statistically. Still, if given the chance, getting Meltdown out of the way early may not be a bad bet. One player to keep your eye on for Yellow is Gumi. Gumi is one of the most underrated PvP players in the whole event, and her scores in team-based games are really good as well. However, Gumi's Achilles heel seems to be movement games such as Ace Race and Rocket Spleef, and to a lesser extent Hole in the Wall and To Get to the Other Side. side. If Gumi can avoid the most movement-based games that drag down her average, she has the potential to surprise everyone and pop off again. Looking at the distribution, Yellow has a decent chance to place anywhere between 1st and 7th. However, as stated before, a lot of Yellow's chances come down to the game pool available for the event. If 2 or 3 PvP games get played, this team is absolutely a favourite to battle it out for the MCC crown. The Lime Llamas. Looking at the Lime Llamas, many would think they're a strong team games team, and many would be correct. Lime are a top 3 team in both grid runners and build mark, as well as the second strongest Sands of Time team in the event, with everyone scoring above their average. Sands of Time is Cub's best game, and though it's only Illumina's 5th best game, he's widely seen as one of the strongest explorers, frequently able to rack up very high scores exploring the dungeon. In MCC 22, Scar also proved himself to be a strong sandkeeper after struggling with exploring in both MCC 20 and 21, with his team placing 2nd. The most unpredictable element of Lime's Sands of Time performance is Jimmy. Throughout Season 2, Jimmy has scored as many as 626 unmultiplied coins or as few as 79. Because of this unpredictability, Jimmy having a strong Sands of Time performance as he done in MCC 17, 18 and 22 will dictate if this team is able to truly shine. In addition to team games, Rocket Speed Rush is a great game for Lime, with them scoring almost 13% above the event average. Surprisingly, Cub, Jimmy and Scar all score below their personal averages, with only Illumina scoring above. The reason that this is an above average game for them, despite it being a weak game for all 3 of them, is because Illumina averages a ridiculous 611 coins. Though it may be worth playing later, there is a risk in doing so. If Illumina underperforms, it's possible the team average could be lower, making this a risky game for Lime. However, there's one game which Lime will definitely be weaker in: Parkour Tag. Lime are the lowest scoring Parkour Tag team in the event, with every player scoring below their average. Ideally, to score well in Parkour Tag, you want 2 strong hunting players. In Season 2, the only player who has hunted more than twice in one event is Illumina, with Scar never hunting, Cub on average hunting twice per event, and Jimmy hunting on average once. Skipping this is definitely in Lime's best interest. The distribution for Lime sees them making it to dodgeball 11% of the time, with their most common placement being around 4th. If we see communication based games being played late, this team is certainly dodgeboltable. The Green Geckos. At first glance, the Green Geckos seem like one of the weaker teams in this event, and though the statistics definitely aren't in their favour, counting them out entirely certainly isn't necessary. Tina and Foolish are both rather inexperienced, having only played in MCC 22 and MCC Pride 22. This leaves open the possibility for both of them to improve quickly though, with Foolish already showing his potential, placing 10th in MCC Pride. Because of this, we've included his MCC Pride statistics in these simulations, as we feel these are closer to his actual skill. Connor has also improved with every event he's participated in, and with Dream to teach him the games, he'll hopefully improve again. Finally, Dream's beaten the odds on many occasions, taking seemingly weaker teams such as the MCC 16 Pink Parrots all the way to Dodgeball. If Green want to make it to Dodgeball though, one thing they'll be looking for is a Parkour Tag finale. Parkour Tag is by far Green's best game, with every single player scoring above their average. In fact, they're the best Parkour Tag team in the event, scoring almost 18% above the average. What makes this even more interesting is how Green struggle in many other movement games, being the weakest hole in the wall and to get to the other side team. Mechanically, it seems that many of the players have strong parkour abilities, and so clear communication and strategy going into the other movement games could certainly help them. In addition to hole in the wall and to get to the other side, the game which Green want to skip at all costs is unsurprisingly Build Mark. Green are the lowest scoring team in the event by over 100 coins, with Dream having always struggled with the game. Tina, Connor and Foolish have only played Season 2 Build Mark once, with Tina and Foolish playing it in MCC Pride, and all 3 of them never placing higher than 5th. This game being rotated out would be ideal for Green. Otherwise, they should aim to get it played as early as possible or skipped entirely. Looking at the distribution for Green, it certainly doesn't seem great. However, it is worth noting that statistics never tell the full story. Similar to Green this event, in MCC 19, our simulations predicted that Cerulean wouldn't be able to place top half, and they went on to make Dodgeball. Anything can happen on the day of the event, and so don't be surprised by an upset from Green.